Hi there, welcome back to the PeopleFirst Podcast, the Young Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Spry, and in today's episode, we're talking about pay rises, when to ask for them, and how to get them. It can seem daunting and impossible to move up a pay grade, but whether or not a promotion is realistic for you and your job right now, it's important to learn the skill of advocating for yourself and learn how to communicate with employers in the right way. To help us dive into this topic and to leave you with a step-by-step guide, I'm delighted to be joined on this episode by Aimee Bateman. Aimee is an award-winning founder, executive coach, and career strategist. Aimee is now dedicated to helping women navigate the workplace at that mid to senior level, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi Aimee, lovely to have you today. I just want to give you a really good space to give yourself a strong intro. So if you could tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about the job that you do, and a bit, maybe an overview of your career. Give us the elevator pitch, That's what I would love to hear. That's what I would love to hear.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Lovely to meet you, Jordan. Thank you for having me today. So I have spent the last 23 years in the people development space. So I started off as a commercial recruiter, so helping people get into jobs, whether they would be huge corporates, public sector, charities, or small entrepreneurial startups. I did that for about 12 or 13 years and then decided that I wanted to help more people and maybe have more impact. So I switched from working for the organisation and helping them find talent and decided that I was going to work for the individual and help them find a job. So I started a little YouTube channel back in 2010. The production was a little bit shocking. I had nobody was really doing anything on YouTube in 2010 in the career space, so I could get away with it, to be honest. But the advice was heartfelt and good. So yeah, helping people with CVs, interviews, and how to secure that dream role and communicate their voice in a very competitive marketplace. That got pretty big and about 10 million hits. And then I raised venture capital and angel investment across a couple of continents. And I grew that YouTube channel into a huge e-learning platform. So we had about 45 experts that delivered training on lots of different career stuff, helping people in the first sort of 10 to 15 years of their career deal with all of the firsts, all of the things that we all have to figure out early on in our career. And 10 million people in 42 countries took our courses. One of them was on the topic that we're going to talk about today. And now I continue to do that. And that business has been acquired. I sold that company on to another company and had a baby. And now I'm back, still helping people feel seen, heard and valued in their career.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And going back to the idea of first, something that we're asking all of our guests, Aimee, is if you would tell us a bit about your first job. That's what I would love to know.
So the first job that had real significance to me, so a lot of your listeners, and I'm sure you might appreciate, those first jobs were in a chip shop. I remember I stunk of chips. And I had loads of spots. But, it was something to do when you're 15, 16.
I always wanted the job in the chippy, Aimee, to be honest. The ladies behind the chippy are the cornerstones of the community, let me tell you. I would have them fight my case in court, you know. So that was a great first job, but I'll not interrupt you anymore.
Yeah, and free chips, as many chips as you want, But my first, I'd say, proper job was in recruitment, actually. Right. So I graduated and started a role, and it was really significant to me because I got into recruitment because I'd been temping, and they always looked like when I took my timesheet on a Friday, they always had a beer and they looked like they were having a nice time, and I thought, they have a lot of fun, I'd quite like to do that job. But I didn't really understand the significance of what they actually do, which is help people get jobs, right? Which is a really beautiful mission, I think. Some people take their careers more seriously than anything else in their career, and it certainly impacts how you feel. We've all had a job where unfortunately, where you don't feel like you matter, nobody sees you. You feel like you might as well have not been there today, or you go home and you put your phone on silent, you watch Netflix and you feel depressed, right? You feel like, there should be more to life than this. Being able to help people feel like they're seen, heard and valued every single day is such a privilege. And that's what happened to me. So I grew up with very, very little self-esteem. A lot of your listeners will experience that. You know, growing up is a really tricky thing, right? You might be bullied. I grew up in foster care. You know, there's not a lot of lots of insecurities, lots of social media, comparing yourself to other people. You always feel like you should be a million miles ahead of where you actually are. But I had this job and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really good at it. And they like me. And I remember just feeling this self-esteem and this validation, like, oh my God, I think I'm actually quite good. I think I quite like myself. And it started, as my confidence grew. And I thought, gosh, all of that has come from just being in a job where people see, hear and value you, you know, just going somewhere for 8 hours a day where you feel like you matter. And it impacts everything else in your life. You know, you're a better mum, dad, brother, sister, daughter, friend, next door neighbour. Like, and I was like, I want to do this forever. This is what I want to do. I want to help people feel like this forever.
And it's obviously going beautifully, to be honest with you. You know, like those numbers you called out, you've like you've said, you went from a YouTube channel to an e-learning platform. You know, it's a big deal, and it's really good to hear that you find that sense of purpose and you want other people to have that too. You know, I think if you don't mind me talking about my own experience,
yes,
I had something similar to you in the sense of I graduated from my marketing masters. I wasn't always the most academic, but I really wanted to be good at something. I wanted to reach the highest level of education that I thought I could, but I ended up working in a call center, and as much as I loved it, it was the best fun ever. I was a number, and I'd always heard people talking about that, and throughout my degree, I'd worked in a pub and I was the manager, and I really felt like I was a necessary part in this machine. And that's what I realized that I actually wanted in my career. It wasn't me doing a job that satisfied me. It was that being wanted, being needed as a necessary person. And when I met a recruitment consultant that I was dealing with, and she saw something in me, and that's how I fell into it. You know, it's that matter of falling in. And I thought, if someone can see something in me and I can make them feel like that, I've got a sense of purpose. People are rewarding me now because of my personality in my job. Then what more could you want? So I don't tell Brooke Street, but I think I'm going to be a careers coach now. I'm motivated after our our calls.
Like you know, you talk about that, and I think that's so important, and I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think so many people, I certainly can resonate with that, even though I might sort of be 10 years, you know, further down the career line than you or whatever. But, you know, you're doing this podcast, right? Like, they've asked you to do this podcast for a reason. And, you know, that feels good. I mean, there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs in our core DNA, right? After, like, all human beings, no matter who you are, you could be, no, it really doesn't matter. Every single one of us, after food and water and safety, you know, all of that stuff, we have a core internal need to feel like we matter. It's that social acceptance. So, you know, finding your tribe, as I like to put it, is just as important as, you know, the salary that you're earning, you know, the job title that you have. You need to feel like what you do matters and that you're part of something. And that's lovely. Yeah, lovely you have that now.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. You know, this is it's one of those things I have said before, and I could be quoted on it, Aimee. I am not motivated by money. I'm motivated by thank you. Do you know what I mean? It's that recognition. So I think, yeah, and like I've mentioned to you before, I think this podcast is going to be really important because a lot of our younger listeners in the Brook Street brand, a lot of our even younger consultants are going to listen to this and think that really be brought back to that point of we are in this industry because we want to help people. It's that idea of support, and touching on that confidence piece. Obviously through your working career you've developed this professional confidence, but how have you grown into your own confidence in yourself as Aimee?
That's without a doubt the biggest challenge I've had to learn in my career. So I've done some quite big things in my career, let's put it that way. When I was expected to not do anything. So, you know, I was the first person to go to university in social services in 9 years from our council care. So the first person to have grown up in the foster care situation to go to university in nearly a decade. So, you know, that is crazy. But I feel like the best thing that I could do for me personally was learn how I was going to get over that inner voice of self-doubt, which often, you know, stops us from doing things. you might have felt it, the people listening to this podcast might feel it. Those moments where you think, I'd love to do that, but I don't think I'm good enough. Or that's for other people to do that. That's not something that I could ever achieve. And I think a couple of things that I learned, because I've spent a lot of time on lots of training courses, and I spent years and years and years getting out of my own way so that I could achieve what's my full potential, is firstly understanding that who you surround yourself with is really, really important. So, we all have people in our lives. I call some feeders, and some people I call them, they're like radiators, right? They give off warmth, and we have people that are like feeders, the vampires that just take from us. So you want really, no matter who you are, no matter how big your personality, you will become product of your environment. We are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So you really want to start looking at the people that you're surrounding yourself with. Do they believe in me? Do they support my dreams? Do they make me feel good about myself? We all know those people. We spend an hour with them and we feel like we can take over the world. Or we spend an hour with them and we feel like we need to take a nap. Like those people. So be really, really conscious of who you surround. Yeah. Sometimes we're related to them and there's not much we can do about that. But, the people that you can choose who you hang with, be really, really, because successful people understand that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Successful people understand that. Incredibly successful people are intentional about it. So they're not just aware of it, they will go out of their way to put themselves into rooms and groups where they're surrounded by people that have big dreams and will support them with theirs. So that's something that really, really helps.
I agree. I love that. Honestly, you're so right. I really am resonating with a lot of the things that you're saying, Aimee, and the story you've had is incredible. And I think, to be honest with you, I can't wait to leave the seat and go and tell my housemate about the 5-person average, because she's going to find that really, really nice. But what I get from that is, and I know it myself, when I'm with my female friends, Aimee, when I'm with any of my friends, I feel like I can take over the world. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's that sense of motivation. But I sometimes also can be both the energy vampire and the radiator too. So it's just finding that nice balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and we can all be like that. We can all be like that. But I mean, your level of self-awareness is your greatest tool. And not just in your career, just in your life. If you know what rooms you thrive in, what rooms you die a death, how you come across in certain situations, they might think you're arrogant, but actually you're just defensive. Or for me, when I'm really excited, I talk in a really high-pitched voice, which comes across as a little bit giddy or a bit unconsidered, when actually it's the complete opposite. I'm just Welsh. I just talk really fast and I just go high-pitched when I'm excited. So as long as we're aware, and sometimes I can be really moody and a complete, pain in the backside to be around. But as long as we're aware of that, then we can make better decisions. Yeah,
I completely agree. And to bring all this back to the topic at hand, and I would love to probably speak generally here, Aimee, what do you think the culture and attitude in the UK is towards seeking things like promotions and stuff at work? Because if we're already in the mindset that we are lacking in confidence, or we're maybe lacking in our ability, what things can we do? Is it encouraged? Are people doing the right thing to be boisterous about asking for pay rises? What do you think?
Well, I think there's 2 parts to that question. The first part being, what is the culture around the mindset of promotions and stuff, certainly in the UK here. And I think what's really interesting is that the millennial workforce brought to, so 75% of the workforce currently being millennial, so that's my generation, we brought something to the workplace that had never been seen before. And there's lots of studies around, Gallup studies, loads of studies around how millennials came in for the first time demanding things that had never previously been demanded from the workforce. So we wanted more professional development. We were certainly thinking, well, yes, I'll come and work for you, but what's in it for me? There was certainly that mutual. The generations before had maybe had that to a level, but research suggests that they were a little bit more just put up and shut up, kind of like go in and do a good job. And then we had this disruptive generation. And Gen Zs, again, research is showing us that Gen Zs are even more less, they're extremely less tolerant of things in the workplace that they don't think is acceptable. So, and in 10 years' time, we're going to be looking at like 25-30% of the workforce is going to be Gen Z in a decade time. So you've got a generation that's coming into the workplace that is demanding more diversity and inclusion, demanding it.
Yeah.
Work-life balance, personal development. They want a clear path for advancement, and that doesn't just include job titles or and professional development. That's pay. They want to know, if I'm not getting a pay rise, I'm not getting this now, when's that going to happen? So what we're seeing is huge shifts within organizations where they are upskilling themselves to learn how to manage Gen Zs and how to ensure that they are not just recruiting, but retaining them. So providing, that culture where, they're not seen as disrupted. They're seen as, well, this is just the way it's going to be now. We're here. So I think the culture is certainly changing. And again, around openness around salaries. When I first started in the world of work, it was 2003. You weren't allowed to talk. There was silence, huge silency clauses around. You don't talk to your colleagues about what they're paid. Huge, but since 2010, there's something called the Equalities Act, which now means that restrictions on pay secrecy have been put in place to just stop discrimination, certainly around gender issues. So, although a lot of companies still tell their staff that actually it's frowned upon to talk about salaries with each other. You shouldn't know who's on what. But I think things are definitely becoming a lot more open and a lot fairer.
Yeah, 100%. It's also, from my experience, I think it's about finding a trusted confidant within your team or within your area that is a peer that you can talk about these things with. So, comparing, or it is that transparency around salary, isn't it, Aimee, and around opportunity. We just want to make sure that no one is being left behind. So I find in the workplace, I will find a trusted confidant that I can talk to. One, so I'm not telling tales or anything or spreading panic, but two, so I know that I can trust them, they trust me, and we can add value to each other through that. But do you think that, and it's actually a conversation I was probably having with a couple of colleagues this week, is do you think that we have to be in our role for a certain amount of time before we actually ask for a pay rise? Or what factors would come into play there?
Well, the first thing is to remember that there's the cost of living. So there's inflation. So that rises every year. It's different every year. At the moment, it's really high. It's not always going to be this high. But you're looking at somewhere around sort of between 4 and 7% each year. So if you're not getting a pay rise, then you're already losing out because the cost of living is going up, but your salary isn't. Or if you are getting a pay rise, but it's 1 or 2%, then again, you're losing out. So that's certainly worth considering. But if you are going into an organisation, you are thinking, right, okay, well, I've only been here a year. It's too early to ask for a pay rise. I think that's the wrong question to be asking yourself. It's not about how long you've been in an organisation. It's about how much value you are providing to that organisation. And if you can justify the fact that you are going above and beyond and providing a huge amount of value within your job and maybe outside of your job, then you are absolutely justified in asking that question.
Happy to hear that, Aimee, so I am. And how should we carry ourselves in the pay review, because I would be conscious of coming on too strong. Maybe it's in our inner person of, not wanting to cause a fuss, but what is the right way to sort of go about that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And statistically, again, research shows that women and minorities are less likely to ask for pay rises in the workplace. So again, we really want to encourage, I really want to encourage people that are listening to that, if you are in a minority, to be really vocal and to advocate for yourself and remember how kick-ass and capable you are. But firstly, what you want to do is, if you want to be thinking about, I'd quite like to have a pay rise, you really need to set the tone before you ask for the pay rise. So what you want to be thinking is, okay, I need to be having some conversations with my manager around 3 things. One, I want to be expressing the fact that, yes, I want to be a top performer within the organisation. That needs to be a narrative that I maybe need to be sharing in my one-to-one reviews on a Friday, or even conversations at lunch or in the pub, whatever. You want to be vocal about this. You are a team player, so you want to be making sure that you are adding value to the organisation as a whole. And thirdly, You want to be working towards a pay rise. So you really want to plant that seed so that when you ask for a pay rise, it is not the first time they have heard these words come out of them. They should be expecting it. If you ask for a pay rise and they're not expecting it, like, as much as I'm on your side, people, you have not done your job properly, right? You have asked too soon. If somebody says no to you, to me, I always think, oh, I asked too soon. I didn't do the work before I asked. So you certainly want
great advice. Great advice.
The second thing is to know what figure that you want, because what you don't want to be doing is negotiating with yourself, right? You want to walk in there, you want to be having this conversation, you want to be thinking, right, I know the figure. And that figure comes from asking people. So trusted people, like you mentioned earlier, trusted people within your organization or other organizations that work in a similar role to you. Look at job boards. Great way for you to find out who's recruiting and what they're paying. Speak to a recruiter. Hopefully you've got one or two lovely relationships with recruiters. I always think that recruiters are a lovely part of the career matrix. So maybe just call a trusted recruiter and have a look online at salary tools. I know there's one. I think there's a few websites out there. I think Glassdoor do one. Just so you can get a really good idea of what that number is for you right now. And then the next thing to do, so yeah, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of work to do before you go into before you have the ask, if you like, is to create what I call a brag file. So you can call it what you want, but it's basically your achievements. I call it a brag file. My very good friend, who's also a career coach, she calls hers a why I'm hot file, which I love. Why I'm hot.
I love that. Yeah, please pass that on. I really enjoy that, honestly.
Her name's Arit. She's a brilliant career coach. And
brilliant work.
She did something recently and she got sent some great reviews. She went, that's going straight in my why I'm hot folder. Loved it. So there you want to be keeping track of any wins that you've had within your organization, and not just, oh, I delivered early on that project, or something that I suggested, even if it's not like directly linked to putting money in the bank account. It could be you work on the reception desk or within an admin capacity, but you've rearranged their software, CRM software, or some kind of process to save people a couple of hours a month in the way that they might file some documents or something. It could be anything, but if it saves people time or money, then that is a win. And try and get the tangibles out of that as well. Not just I did this. Think about how that actually impacted the organization. Feedback, so good feedback from customers, colleagues, suppliers. When you've come off a really difficult call in that call center, you talked about working in that call center before. I've worked in environments like that. You've had a really, really difficult call. I used to work in High Street, a retailer, at Christmas. You can imagine how stressful that was.
I've been there too.
Long shifts, people screaming and shouting at you. Awful.
People screaming. And Aimee, I was telling someone in my team yesterday, because I worked in Topshop whenever I was 16, and I loved it. But being in the retail environment or waiting on tables is a great example. Yeah,
waitressing. I did that.
You have to deal with those people over the table when you've done something wrong. Why am I sitting behind my laptop scared to send an email? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
We were right in front of those people providing hard customer service, and now I have to retract.
We were born and nurtured in a boiler pot. What are we excited 100%. About sending an email for?
I know. So I totally get that. It comes up and down, doesn't it?
It really does. So those moments where you might get an email from a client saying, do you know what, thanks, I know I lost my mind a bit, but you really helped me today. So if any listeners out there receive feedback like that from customers, clients, suppliers, save them. Just put them in a little folder in your inbox or screenshot them on your phone, but just keep them and put them in your brag file. Any positive stuff from previous reviews, and any examples where you've gone above and beyond. So maybe you helped out, you came in on a Saturday, or you've actually been mentoring the new girl that's started work a couple of months ago. It's not part of your job description, but you've really been helping her along. All that stuff, you're going to use that as evidence and reasons why to ask for this pay rise, and why you're justifying the increase in salary, justifying your worth, really. And then the next thing is you've got to think about, in any negotiation, what's in it for them. So what you don't want to be doing is going into a meeting with your boss going, I want a pay rise because my rent's just gone up, or my bus fare's gone up, or my travel's just gone up, or something that is completely unrelated to the work, to work. It's got to be. I remember I was in work once, and we had an NCP car park near
Okay.
it. Yeah. And they started saying that they were going to start charging like £6-7 a day. And I remember a colleague of mine was like, oh gosh, that's like 300 quid a month or whatever. Now she went in and asked for a pay rise and they marched her straight out.
Out
They
the
were like,
door,
get the
yeah.
bus, park
Yeah.
10 minutes further away. Like, no. So, that was a lesson that we all learned really early in our 20s. Don't do that. So you want to think about, when you're asking for that pay rise, you want to be thinking about, or any negotiation, what's in it for them. So, I've got these other ideas of things that we can do within the organization that I think is going to help. I'm really committed to my upskilling and further developing my skills. I want to spend the next 1, 2, 3, I see the next 5 years of my career here in this team. I'd like to mentor somebody. I'd like to take on additional responsibilities. So you certainly don't want to be going in there saying, give me a pay rise or I'm off. You don't want to be doing that. You certainly want to be honing down on what's in it for them. So they're 4 things. There's a few other things. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want me
keep
to
going?
Yeah,
keep
okay,
going.
okay,
100%.
okay.
100%. Keep
So
going.
the next thing. So you've got you want to be discussing vocal, planting the seed, knowing your figure, creating your brag file, thinking about what's in it for them. The next thing is making sure that the timing is right. You don't want to be asking for a promotion when the vibe or the energy in the company is off, right? They're not doing very well. They've just made some redundancies. They've just closed an office. So-and-so, who was a brilliant team leader, has just handed her notice in and everybody's really stressed about it. Like, now is not the time. And only you know that, right? You know what the vibe is like in the team. But when the company is doing well, really, it also helps to keep all of this information, your brag file, everything like that, on all the research you've done, ready in your little sort of like your toolkit, ready for when you have that big win or when you get that good review. And that's when you pull out the big guns, right? But you've already got all the prep and you just wait, because timing is everything. And then what you would do is you would just send an email and ask for a conversation. This is not a conversation that you have over email. It has to be a face-to-face sit down. So you just want to say, look, hi Mark, hi Mary, whoever it is, I'd love the opportunity to sit down with you and discuss my pay review. Can you let me know when is a good time for you? I would like to discuss the possibility of increasing my salary. And they might come back and say, now is not a good time, or what number do you want? And you just have to keep batting it back. You want that sit down meeting. I would really appreciate it if we could have the opportunity to sit down and discuss this, because this is definitely a conversation that you want to have face to face. And then I always think about it like playing chess, because your career is literally just one big game, right? Life is just one big game where nobody's coming out of this alive, right? We're all just playing a game. We're all just trying to figure it all out. Nobody has it all figured out. We're just trying to do our best. So I always think about it like a game of chess. You want to think about, well, if I ask for a pay rise, what could their move be? What are they gonna come back with? They might come back with, well, Mark does the same job as you and he gets paid that, so I'd have to give him a pay rise. What's your answer to that going to be? They might come back and say, this is not a good time. What's your answer to that going to be? They might actually come back and say, you're not worth that. What's your answer going to be? So you need to make sure that you have answers for all of those things. So, the Mark does the same job. Well, that's what your evidence is for, right? That's what your brag file's for. Well, he might have the same job title, but he certainly hasn't had the impact that I've had over the last 6 months. What do? Bring out your evidence. Not a good time. Okay, great. I understand that. Massively appreciate that. When is a good time? And what would need to happen for that? Can we sit down in 6 months and have that conversation? Get it in the diary. You're not worth that. This happens sometimes to the people I coach. I hate this one. But if they say that to you, what are you going to do? Well, you already know what your figure is because you've done your research. You've got your brag file and you've got, people in another organisation, actually my market rate for this position is this. So that's why all of that research is really, really important. And then finally, I would just say, don't get emotional, because it can be really emotional. Like, this massive deal. I've gone in and asked for pay rise. It's the first time I was shaking like a leaf. I'm surprised they didn't laugh me out of the room, because it was a pathetic show. I died a death, I have to say. But I got better at it, right? Don't get emotional. Again, don't use reasoning, remember, outside of the organisation, and do not threaten to leave, and just practice it and practice it and practice it, because it's an uncomfortable situation. Nobody likes this. Nobody likes having conversations around worth, money with people that are more senior than them. So just make sure that you're practiced that's what I would say, really. That would probably be my best advice.
Well, that was a solid corner of advice, to be honest with you. And I think everything there I have learned something from too. I think, you're right. Even things like, has someone really senior in your client left you a good comment on LinkedIn? Let's keep that in file. What is that feedback that I've got? And it's not gloating, it's showing your value to the organization, and you showing that you are a vital part in that chain. I'm just thinking about what we talked about in being in that situation, being in the room, going in. Would there be a place for HR to be in these calls, or is this very much you and your line manager?
I think initially HR doesn't need to be in a room. So HR would be called in if it was some kind of if there was an issue, or it was a performance review when somebody was maybe underperforming. But just an initial conversation around what would having a pay rise look like? Because a lot of the time, remember that some people will go in and get the pay rise, but that is not the norm, right? On the first ask. So it's like, you normally get the pay rise on the second ask. Right. I mean, if you go in there and do everything that I said and you get that pay rise on that first ask, then high five you. You are epic.
Brilliant.
Right?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Well done, you. But you have to know that if that doesn't happen, that's normal. Because what you would want to do is you want to come out of that room and they would say, well, maybe we'll give you a 1 or 2%. And you'll say, well, I'm looking for more, and they might say we can't do more at the moment. Well, you might say, well, that's okay, but can we put a plan together of what a path to getting me to this salary would look like? What things would be expected of me? What targets would you like me to hit? What activities would you like me to get involved in? What would that look like? You don't take a no as a no and then go away and not talk about it again. You as a manager, can you help me get to work towards a position where I am earning this money? What would that look like? So you have some kind of plan, some development plan. And if you get that, well, that's wonderful too, right? Because you're closer to your end goal. So yeah, that's what I would say. Never just take a no for a no. It's just a way to get closer to getting that yes.
It's a not yet, so it is
right.
not a no.
Yeah, I love
exactly.
that.
Yeah. No, I get it. I completely get it. I'm actually quite lucky. I've my manager is only 2 or 3 years older than me, so we're both Gen Z millennial, and what really brings me satisfaction knowing that when I'm talking to him about my career, he's also thinking about his, so there's not, I'm having some of this pie so you can't have it. He opens doors for me and puts me in rooms and things, so I'm really lucky that I have that. But for the listeners out there that maybe are working with someone who is maybe a little bit more senior in their career, maybe could be a little bit set in their ways, Aimee, I'm thinking, how would someone who maybe is a bit early in their career approach that?
So just remember that the communication. So you communicate with them in the way that they want to be communicated with. So that's the number one communication tool in your career. Speak to people in the way that you want to speak. You speak to them in the way that they want to listen. So again, it might be more considered. It might be, sitting them down. Can you let me know when is the best time for you? And you go through all of the things that I've talked about. Now, if you do all of those things well and they sit down and they're not prepared to work towards a plan of what that might look like, even if it's, can we revisit this in a year? If you're outperforming your peers and you are doing everything above and beyond, and in 12 months' time, they're not willing to sit down with you and talk about you earning the money that the market tells you, because this isn't about you going in saying, I want £1 million when the market's telling you that your rate is 50. This is about you being realistic because you've done your research in the marketplace. Then you have to question whether or not that's the place that you want to be, because we're not trees. We don't have to stay put. Okay. And I certainly am not here to advocate that anybody leaves an organization. But maybe you will leave an organization, but and again, people very rarely leave jobs, they leave managers. So that might be a leadership issue, which I suppose is probably another podcast topic.
That could be a podcast for another day. It could, but I think what we've what you've mentioned has been out for me, as I've said, and it's just all these little things that these resources aren't really around, you know? It's why a platform like yours or a platform that you developed is so important, you know? It's having knowing that someone else has been in this position before me and they have tested to pave the way and I can follow their suit. That's the impression that I'm getting, you know? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
you've created that safe space for other people to be able to have that confidence, you know?
And one of the things
Um,
I will say on that, actually, Jordan, is that, there are times when an organization literally doesn't have the
can
money. So when I
mm,
was building my business and I was recruiting my founding team, there was one chap that came into the organization and I actually didn't have the money for him. So I took it out of my salary and gave it to him just temporarily for a year. And
mm,
then there was somebody else that, again, we were a startup, we didn't have the money. But there are other things that you can get. So if you go in asking for an extra £5,000 and the business says, we actually just do not have the money
mm,
to pay you that, then it might be that actually you could negotiate some personal development. Could they put you on a training course that would potentially see you advance your skills? Could they pay for you to do a qualification? Could they maybe do, there are other things, an extra couple of days holiday, leave a year, or I don't know, but there are other things that you could negotiate. It's not just about money. It's about what's important to you, and other things might be more important, and it's okay to have those conversations as well.
course, and to be honest, not everyone is motivated by money. It's nice to have, but it's not a driver for most people. But I think we need to keep up with the market rate. I think we need to make sure that we're being paid a respectful amount for the work that we are doing. That's
Yeah,
all.
well, we
That's the
have
bottom line.
60% of Gen Z and millennials living
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck. And that's from studies that have come out from Deloitte. That's 2024 study. That's this year. 60%, no savings, no more than £250 savings, paycheck to paycheck. So now it's more important than ever to be making sure that you're earning your market rate and what you
Of
deserve.
course, of course. Now, Amy, if we're in an entry level job, for example, many of our consultants work for admin officers in the civil service, for example, that are on paid grades, you know, or you maybe you're in the NHS and you have bands, or maybe you're in a place where zero or no pay reviews are offered. Are there other steps that we can take to then progress our career journey with that company?
Yeah, absolutely. And I spent a number of years just exclusively recruiting for public sector and not for profits. So this was something that was just the norm with the
Hmm.
candidates that I represented. Couldn't go outside of a pay band, right? So the other things that you can do there again is to just look at, well, what other opportunities within the organisation are there for me to advance? Is there a course that I could go on? Are there qualifications that are funded through other different pots of money? But it could be a qualification, accountancy qualification. It could be a coaching qualification. It could be whatever qualification, something that's going to add value to you, make you more employable, make you as a young professional more attractive in the workplace. It's going to add to your CV, right? And then the next thing is, well, that's okay. So the next band is for this job. So
Hmm.
what what does that journey look like from here to that promotion? What steps do I need to take, and how can you support me, Mrs. Manager, Mr. Manager, so that I get that promotion? And now all of a sudden I'm in a new pay, and it might take a year, it might take 2 years, but how can I be supported to get to that
Yeah.
position? And they, certainly they would be the steps that I would be looking to take in a data entry, in a sort of an entry level position.
Yeah, and that's it. And I'm calling out to our brilliant associates that are maybe in an AO role or want to move up to an EO role in the civil service. It's finding the steps that is going to help you get there and asking for support at each way, at each direction. And there's always as well that old statement that closed mouths don't get fed. We have
Mm.
to ask for what we want, and if it's not money that you want, if it's career development, you said it very start of this podcast, Amy. We need to preemptively plant the seeds in our managers' heads that this is what we want. This is what we want to go for. We're not here screaming and begging for more money. We're asking what steps we can take to better ourselves to reach that next stage of recognition. That's really it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I honestly think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people that listen and things like that. That is actually the end of our questions, but I don't know if you have anything that you really want to say that you maybe felt like you didn't hammer it in or anything like that, you know?
I would just say that we often spend a lot of time making sure that we develop the relationships with the people that are more senior to us in an organization. And I get that, like the boss, I get that. And also, as you develop through your career, you'll want to, nurture the relationships with the people that are behind, 1 or 2 steps behind you, and at one point will report to you. But we don't often talk about nurturing those relationships with your peers. So the people that are they're sat right next to you, right? They're on the same level in their career as you. They're failing at stuff, they're trying at stuff, they're succeeding at stuff. You're all in it together. And I think that the best advice I can give is to really nurture those relationships, because over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, however long your career is going to be, these people that you might not think are that important are actually going to be the most important relationships that you're ever going to have, because they're going to show up, because good people go on good journeys. They'll disappear for 10 years and then they'll come back and they'll work for you. They'll apply for a job. You'll work for them. They'll be a supplier. They'll show up as a customer. They'll show up as an employer. They always do. So nurture those relationships with your peers, because I genuinely think they're the most important relationships that you'll ever have. And if you focus on the relationships and nurturing beautiful, wonderful professional relationships, the opportunities will come. They will just come.
I am so glad you said that, because I could not agree more. Honestly, could not agree more. There's no point in burning bridges with anyone in this industry, any industry, because at one point you will come up against these people again. I have friends that I did my marketing degree with that are in a similar industry, and I cannot wait to work with them in the future. I cannot wait for our paths to cross. So what you just said there really should resonate with a lot of people. Remember that although these people are our colleagues and maybe they annoy us or maybe they get in our way a bit sometimes, but at this point, they are important, and at some point in the future they will also be important. So great, really, really good point. The last thing I have to ask you, what is one thing, Aimee, that a listener can do this week to prepare themselves for a pay review?
Do some research. So if you already know what your market rate is, then fine. But if you don't, do a little bit of research and find out what your market rate is. And if you already know that and think, oh, well, I don't have any homework then because I already know it, then your homework is to start your brag file. Start collecting all of the good things that people say and have said about you, and save them on your phone, on your laptop. And also, you don't need to show anyone. You don't need to be like, hey, guys, come look how good I am. Even if they're just for your eyes only. Because we all have days where, no matter who you are, how confident you are, we all have days where we think, oh, I don't think I'm good enough. This is really hard. And then in those moments, you go straight to your brag file and remember how kick-ass and capable you are.
Love that. And I love the brag file, but I'm going to say I will be using the I'm hot folder, I think, going forward. And yeah, just lastly, before I say thanks, I'd just love to know, where can our listeners follow you? And yeah, any plugs, any humble brags you want to make, Aimee, please.
Well, I put a huge amount of free stuff on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel. So my name is Aimee Bateman, and it's AIMEE. So Aimee Bateman, have a look for me on YouTube, and I'll post lots of content to help you be seen, heard, and valued in your career.
That's great. Aimee, I could talk to you all afternoon, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed this recording. But yeah, really grateful, and I will definitely be checking out some things that you have posted.
Thank you. I've loved chatting to you. Thank you so much.
That was today's episode. I want to say a big thanks again to Aimee for her insights. Remember to check out Brook Street for our latest job postings. You never know, there may be a dream role on there for you. Thank you again for listening to the People's First Podcast. If you find it helpful, please share with a friend or a colleague, and give us a follower rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to the show. See you next time.